Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We are just admitting a few last people to our session. And joining me today is Jamie from Country Heritage Park. And we will get started in about 30 seconds. So again, welcome to everybody who's joining us via Facebook Live and via our Country Heritage Park session for Halton Garden Week. My name is Andrea Rowe. I am the Director of Sustainable Environments for Halton Environmental Network and work on a fabulous program called Halton Food. Our guest today is Jamie, the CEO, CO of Country Heritage Park up in Milton. So he is going to share some information about this amazing hidden gem, it's been described as. I can't believe how many people still aren't aware of this property and what you have to offer up there. So a few last people just joining us now, but we will get started and I will turn it over to you, Jamie, in about 30 seconds. If you don't mind just sharing some of your story, some of your farming history, some of the experiences that have led you to where you are today. That would be great. And then we'll get into a bit of a virtual tour of Country Heritage Park, and then share some of the resources that you have available for virtual, or not virtual field trips, but field trips, hopefully when we get back to in-person abilities to be able to come and visit your property. And we have a number of teachers who are joining us this week. Thank you so much for your interest in what we have going on here. So Jamie, I will turn it over to you and let's get started.
Well, thanks, Andrea. Welcome everybody. Love to be able to talk about this because really the journey to get to where I came to from here is pretty remarkable. In my opinion, it is a hidden gem. I won't tell you what the sign on my desk says, but the most fun that I have is having people say that they've been in Milton for 30 years and never been out here, or they've driven by here and never realized that this place was here, or they've sat on the 401 and never recognized that this was actually a workable, functioning farm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's because you have to understand that it kind of disappeared off the radar. I was brought in to actually put it back on the radar. So do exactly what I had done when I led the Holland Marsh, when I led the Ontario Food Terminal. I was responsible for making people aware and bringing together more of an awareness of what was taking place, because those were special places and they needed to be up there. In answer to your first question, I've been involved in agriculture. In my world, it's food and farming. It's not really agriculture. We have a ministry federally called Agriculture and Agri-Food that I tend to laugh at because 98% of the population can't tell you what an agri-food is. So if they have a ministry, that's just because they like words that nobody can figure out. I come from a background of running farm organizations, from essentially fixing things. And that's why I was brought into Country Heritage Park, is because I viewed it as an education corridor. My biggest struggle in 20 plus years before I came here was how to be able to get to urbanites who are at minimum 3 generations removed from farming. At maximum, they're 7 and 8 and sometimes. And they don't recognize what farming is. Country Heritage Park, because it was formerly the Ontario Agricultural Museum, has that linkage to the past. What we've done is, while we still have the past here, we've actually engaged in both the present and the future side of what agriculture will look like. So much of what I've done is try to make it more of a, for lack of a better and an easier word to use, it's almost essentially an urban eco farm, meaning we're doing a lot of practices that are prevalent in both urban agriculture and near urban agriculture, which is what we are, but at the same time, respecting the fact that we're not going to be organic. I can't be. I don't have 3 to 5 years to wait for my land to do anything. I won't be able to be all of the other names that people want it to be, because I've sat at the federal tables and know what the discussions are. I know how completely frustrating it is for people not to understand why somebody can't be the way that they exactly want it. Mostly it's because we don't understand our own definitions ourselves. So when it comes to being stipulated or mandated or put into something, I'm regulated enough out the hilt, trying to actually be. And yes, Andrea, we are an actual farm. We have a farm business registration number in addition to everything else that we do. But being able to talk about how we move and get about the food system, that's where we kind of made a little difference on what we are doing here. So in essence, we've got last year we had 15 acres that we gave to an urban farm group called the Toronto Black Farmer Growers Collective. We donated food into Burlington to Food for Life. We have food for kids here that are here in our site, using us as a distribution hub or a warehouse hub for free, because we have to do that, because that means that that's money that they aren't spending on rent somewhere that they can put towards contributing towards food. And in my world, that's what the essence is of what we need to figure out, is how to be able to combine altruistic attitudes with a business kind of professional run ideal. We think we've got the mix. COVID threw a loop to us. As much as I can chuckle about the fact that, you know, I generally don't miss people. People tend to pay for all the stuff that we do. And that means that we're able to do some of the other projects that we've got ongoing here. So in essence, I miss the educational aspect of Country Heritage Park. I miss the fact that we used to get 10 to 15,000 students coming here. I miss the aspect of not being able to do what we do as a virtual or a live or viral or whatever the technology word that they're using, because what we do is do hands-on. I mean, it's difficult to see a fire being constructed in an 1830s old house, or, you know, talking to our chickens or donkeys or whatever they want to look at, because most of them need to be, versus the idea that we can actually get it through the internet. And I think that's where we've gone off in a lot of ways, is because social media, the internet, there's all these other things that are out there. Unfortunately, I'm not Photoshop. This is actually what I look like on any given day. And when I have to come in and deal with my chickens, or, you know, we're having to clean and plow the roads or do whatever, that's all part of my role as well. So in addition to all the other things, I'm still the guy that looks like the janitor that runs the place. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely description. So what year did you come to Country Heritage Park to do what you're doing now?
I used to count it backwards, like I was in Vietnam and getting out at some point, but I realized I'm not there yet. I came in December 2014 after 8 years with the Holland Marsh Growers Association, which was an association that I started for that group of farmers. They're a very small collective, but at that point, they too had disappeared off the radar and were being ignored by much of what was around, even though they're right outside Toronto. So they weren't getting any traction. And my connection points are mostly political and getting things done. So when it comes to being able to figure out regulations, for example, I'm a policy wonk. I don't deny that. But I'm also a hands-on kind of guy, and I get right into it. And all I'm looking for is solutions. So I'm your prototypical guy that just doesn't understand no for an answer. So when I came here, it was, we're going to do it this way. And after a year of doing it their way and losing money, I said, now we're going to do it my way. And for the first time in its history, including when it was museum, we made money, because there are proper ways of doing a not-for-profit charity, which is what we are. You can still be a business, and you can still function as a not-for-profit charity. Doesn't mean that I made lots, but it didn't go broke doing what we had to do. So when I talk about all the different interchangeable pieces, it's because we had to become a farm. We had to be able to have all the projects that we've got ongoing that you want me to talk about later. But we wanted to be able to do that and make the shift. So in essence, it was a cultural shift that took place. And it's taken I'd say 4.5 years before we got everything to the point where now we can do what we want to do.
So it's a bit of a before and after. Explain how the property used to function when it was the the Agricultural Museum, and what your vision has been during the transformation into what it is now.
Well, so here's the easy way of saying it. The government sank a lot of money in here, and I'm very grateful for them doing that. To be honest, I look at this as being 185 years of a moving motion picture. Means I've been challenged on a number of occasions by politicians about the ways and standards of which farmers do things. And one of them, I won't say where he ended up, but he lost the green leadership race, if that helps. However, he wanted to go back to the idea of oxen and horse. And we've done the oxen and horse. We've done the small and convertible tractors that don't work. We've done a lot of this. When I'm able to bring people out here, we template ideas so I can show them what it was like. As I always say when people come out here, when Canada was first formed, and I've got a long lineage with the country, it's late 1600s, early 17s. That's how long my family's been here. But you're given 50, 100, and you'd be able to plow maybe 1 to 5 acres a year. That's how much you were breaking land. And that wasn't a lot. And you're still talking about 6 months of snow and horrendous conditions and, you know, all the stuff that's there. So we've got examples of all that. We also have examples of modernizing what we've done, meaning we go in and we plow up. This year, we're doing something different with our fields. We're going to be covering with biodegradable plastic so that we've got an advantage on some of the weeds because we're right at Kelso's edge. And of course, we don't spray. So, you know, weed control is always something that we struggle with for the first 3 or 4 years of working. We've been going back and forth with what's the best way to handle it. And we've gone through it and we've figured it out. Same with our livestock, same with our whatever we do. We've got all these things are based around learning experiences in the reality of what we deal with, not the reality of a 15,000 acre farm out in Alberta or something. This is what happens on our 80-acre little property. We have 5 barns, of which 3 of them are functional for what we do. And that's kind of a good thing as we move ahead on what we've got aligned with where we're going. So, I mean, you've got an overview there and your little arrow, I can't see your little.
Where would you like to start the tour for people who haven't had a chance to visit yet? Which driveway?
You know what, the overview is good. We have 2 entrances, and I love the fact that we have 2 entrances because when you say go to the south entrance, everybody's wondering what that is. The south entrance, if you're looking at the picture, is on your left-hand side. It's the one immediately south of where their property is, and that's the southern border of it. The visitors entrance is going to be converted when we get some more work. As you know, this area has seen a growth and development on the sides. At some point, they're going to take away the bridge and Tremaine over the 401, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't impact us. One thing I think people need to be aware of is that they can't make this property into development. They can't put houses on here. They can't do what everybody seems to think that they can do. Simply put, I'm already regulated through the escarpment, through the region, through all the other provincial mandates and the layers that go on top of me. And that makes me quite pleased because at the end of the day, I think you need something to be able to have this. Now, the name is a misnomer. It says Country Heritage Park. That's what they ended up. It should be the farm use and food, you know, experience, something like that, because we're not a park. We're private property. We're not open to the public in a per se. We do a lot of events. We do a lot of weddings when it's pre-COVID and hoping post-COVID. But at the same time, that where your little arrow is, that big barn is a real luxury to be able to have. It's a barn that the Gambrel barn, and anybody that has $1 million and wants naming rights, I'll name it whatever you want. However, the Gambrel barn has that name because that's the structure of the barn roof, and people aren't aware of simple things like that. Beside it, the white building is a 152-year-old church hall from 1867 from Pushlink. It was promised to be able to do it. I have enough parking for 3,000 people or 3,000 vehicles all the way along the backside. That means that we could welcome 10 to 20,000 people and still shoot a cannon down the middle of the property and never hit people because it's that large to be able to deal with. The fairgrounds, if you move the arrow up just slightly and keep going up. So the fairgrounds got the little track on it. So part of what we're doing with that is that's where we hold our fairs and where we're doing other agriculture or ag related stuff. We can actually do a rodeo, which is one of the things we're talking about. We're talking about doing jumping more than anything else because that's there. The one, and it's funny, I'm looking at a field that we've discontinued and grassed over, but there was a field there. And when I first started, all it did was grow weeds. Like, and this was an example of farming. I almost puked as I looked at it. This overview is about 5 years, maybe 5.5 years old. It's still a good overview, but at the same time, a lot's changed. So we got hit with Dutch elm disease and with the emerald borer. So we have ash and elms all the way through the property because the government at its time put those in because they're fast growing trees. They're not native to this property, and we are going back to doing that. So our goal, and has been, and we've followed through, is that for every tree that we've removed because of disease or death, we've planted 2, in some cases 3. So we've been in a process of reclaiming the land and rejuvenating what's there. The backside is where we do all the farming. So if you moved your arrow up just to the top of the circle there, yep, right there, that whole back of the property is where we do all the various farming right now. Your arrow is sitting right at a crossroads. So we've got a garden in there. We've rebuilt buildings, not rebuilt, but we've reestablished and beyond maintaining, we've renovated, so to speak, because these are all heritage buildings in many cases. We have 19 of them on the property. I have to jump through hoops to get them fixed. And let me tell you, an 1850s house does not get fixed like you do with one of the modern ones. You've got to go through so many different things along the way. But we've managed to fix up, and I'm sure I'll get a text from my staff member that's watching here, my teammate, but we've managed to do about 17 buildings so far, and we're not done. But as you can see, we've got various property that is utilized to be able to do what we want to be able to make it do now, instead of what it used to be, where you'd have an event here and you'd get maybe 30 people and they'd pay $5, and that was a great thing. To quote Ernie Eves, the financial minister, in 1996 on his final audit, where they spent $2.948 million and they made $311,000. This wasn't a good investment at the time.
All right, so where else can you take us on the tour? Where is where's your community kitchen that I'm so excited to come and visit?
Well, that is at the Conestoga room, which you can't see, but see the 3-line buildings there on the one side right by the South Road? So move it all the way over. Keep moving your arrow all the way over.
I'm trying to get rid of some messages. Okay, so where are...
So keep going over to your left.
Left?
Left.
Left?
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay, okay.
Keep going.
Okay.
Now go up. And there it is.
Ah, okay.
We have, that's known as the Conestoga room. It's got a community kitchen in the back, a restaurant at the front. Actually, we we're just talking about that. We're just putting the final layer around the vent. For lack of a better word, I just wanted it pristine. We could have opened it at any time. However, I wanted it to look really good because the building itself was a hunk of crap when we got into it. So we've sunk a lot of money into it to make it so that it's a part of the community aspect. A restaurant at the front will be taking place. The community kitchen at the back is all ready to go. We've got all the equipment. We've got everything all lined up for it. Right now, as I said, it needs just to be cleaned, and I want that one layer of paint and the what I call a nice cut around the venting itself where we had to put a hole in the roof. I want that fixed so that it looks perfect. So that when it opens, because it won't, after the first time you use it, it's used equipment, but everything there, we got it all lined up. That's an exciting project, I gotta be honest with you, because people said we couldn't do it. Yeah, we can. People say that you're not supposed to do that. Yeah, we should, because foodpreneurs want to do stuff. And you've got all kinds of people that need to be able to have a space to do this, including the Black Farmer Collective that we deal with. When they take the product off they can convert it into a sustainable meal that they can pass off at that point, rather than have people do, take a raw product. This is the misnomer about dealing with people that are hungry and really don't have access to everything that we take advantage for. And is that they won't have stoves, or they may not have all the utensils or anything else that we have. So the abilities to make soup, where you can just put water and put it on a heating pan, or like a heating platter, that's maybe sometimes all they've got, or a microwave. Well, you can't put a pepper in a microwave and hope that something develops. So they are in the process of being able to add value to everything that they do as well.
Mhm.
That means the about 350 to 500 families that we're feeding right now in Toronto with eggs and with meat. And if I can get by the legal from Chicken Farmers of Ontario, then I'll be able to actually have them allow us to grow more birds for families that are down there, because that's what we do here. It's a good educational aspect. If we have children and they're walking through, yeah, we're a fully functional farm, but we're also going to be having it so that that cow that they see out in the field, well, that's going to be steaks and burger for the night. And it's all grass fed, and they're all basically very rural, and they lead very, very lovely lives. If you've walked into my barns, you'll see that they're absolutely clean all the way through. I've had uh, compliments about how we do it, because our animals are very humanized, and not in a bad way. It's just they have conversations. I can walk in like I did last night with people, and the donkeys are just yelling at me to come over and say hello. That's a good thing. But we have goats and sheep and laying eggs and or laying chickens, and we'll have meat birds, and it's because we have to be a fully diverse functional farming operation.
Mhm. I remember the first time I brought my two boys up to visit, and the pig had just had piglets, and they wanted to know what the piglets' names were.
Ah, yes. For those on the call, I'm very sorry about this, but I don't name anything I eat. So unlike Andrea, I really, as much as I get attached to what's there, and I scratch them behind the ears and have a little bit of fun, I'm not somebody that actually has that. And by the way, just so that you're aware, I'm not a farmer. I've always said I'm not a farmer. I'm an advocate. I'm a fighter. I'm a crusader, a renegade, anything that you want, a rebel along the way, but I'm not a farmer. I run a farm. Um, I have more respect for farmers now that I'm doing this than even when I was doing all the other stuff that I'd done for years.
Mm.
Uh, this is not an easy life, and I'm here all the time, and it's not because I want to be, it's because it has to be. So, you're not getting out of making sure that your donkey that's pregnant is going to have in this case, she had another one, and it happened that the Raptors won the NBA title, and yet we're not there because you're making sure that nothing happens, or the cows have to be taken care of, or the sheep, some Sunday they pop out and you're dealing with triplets. These are realities of what we deal with every day.
Mhm. You may not be a farmer, but you're a difference maker, and we thank you for that. So um, let me see, what are some other highlights of this property that people might not know about? Oh, what is this big white barn in the back? I want to talk
Oh,
about
that's they call it the IH barn. It's a Mennonite barn. Swiss Mennonites, when they came up to Canada from Pennsylvania, that area, and there is an interesting story that goes with it. So it's an octagonal barn. It's one of 9 left inside the province of Ontario. They were more prevalent in Elmer, that area where the Swiss Mennonite had landed into. That was a sign of wealth. They wanted to make sure that people knew that they were wealthy when they were coming in. So they didn't do the barns the same way. I will say this up front, as much as I love the design and I'd love to make it into a theater and around, if I had it as an animal barn, they're the most useless animal barn I've ever seen, because all the cows would be kicking themselves. They really don't have good motion for the beamings that go across. And to be saying that it's a frustrating little barn to deal with is an understatement. I have other barns around. We have 3 other barns on the backside. So if you're looking to the right, the Riley barn is the black one. If you look to the left, the Lucas barn is on the other side. So that one there, that's where our cows go. All our animals are kept there. In answer to somebody else's question that's going to pop up, no, I do not put out the sheep and the goats. I put them outside, but I don't let them wander around. We have coyotes, and right now we have a lone wolf. And I have a deaf Syrian refugee that works for me now as a farmhand, and we have an awful lot of conversations because in his farmland, where he came from, he doesn't have wolves or coyotes. They don't have that problem. So, the animals that he's used to raising, they're grazing across, vast areas and being able to do it. And I'm trying to explain a wolf, and it's just not happening. So, it's like you can't put him out, because he was all hell bent and determined that we were going to have the goats and they were going to prance around and everything was going to work out great. And it doesn't work out because, simply put, the amount of predators that we have surrounding us because of Kelso and that vast land behind us, that's pretty huge. I can deal with the raccoons, the possums, the skunks, anything like that. The coyotes and we have conversations that boil down to, you stay on your side of the fence, but the wolf, she's been cutting across.
The lone wolf. And just as a point of reference for people, because I can see in the chat that people are trying to situate themselves. So where I have my cursor right here.
401.
401. This is
Kelso's Lake. Yep, that's where you get your water from. The 32,000 residents of Milton get their water drawn from that reservoir every day. And if you look right down the road that's beside the track there, that road, keep going over a little more, to the right this time. There you go. So there's two 24-inch concrete pipes that run right underneath my property that go right into Milton. And someday I'll turn this into a lake if you continue to do this to me. So just take the bulldozer.
And then the ski hills are back here.
And so we have two gateways behind us. At some point, we're going to have to recognize that we're going to be one of the last places in Halton that's going to have this kind of a beautiful aspect. Part of me wants to be able to engage and work with people along the way, so we did that. So with conservation, we've got gates that go, like, we're gated in from the back, but we have gates that connect both ourselves and Halton Conservation, because at some point we're going to do joint events when things get out. At some point we're going to have the ability to have this back and forth so that people can feel a sense of what they want. Our motive around here is the idea that we're a community within a community. And that's something that we need to continue to emphasize. It's not your grandfather's museum anymore. Now it's a living, breathing inter-community. And we've got to continue to expand on that with the work that we do.
A working farm, and yet you do have historical buildings and displays of old farm equipment and cars. I'm gonna see if I can move on to the next slide, because part of the fun part of your field trips is actually going and being able to see some of those things as well. So why don't we segue into some of the curriculum that you've put together and the field trips that you offer. And I want to see lots of questions coming in to the chat box too. So,
well, this is our source of pride, Andrea, and this is what drew me, because we need to be educated on food. COVID showed a lot of cracks, but they showed cracks that I was already aware of. It was just, I needed something like this to be able to have a conversation more than anything else, to have the conversation of where we feed ourselves from. We are a spoiled, entitled little society some days, and I can say that quite honestly, because we think of ourselves as being really high up in the food chain. We're 35 million people. There are 11 cities that are bigger than us around the world. Think about that from a population standpoint. From a farmer's aspect, I can tell you that from the hort side, fruit and vegetable, whether you're organic or conventional, we've always struggled with getting any of the proper either herbicides, pesticides, anything along the way. Because we're such a small market, we don't constitute anything. The grain farmers around here, the running joke is that we grow as much as what they waste off the back of a truck inside of Iowa. Like, we're just not that that large of a force to be reckoned with on a globalized scale. But we're a large enough force to be recognized that we need to be continually talking about what happens. So as you can see up on there, it's like how farms feed us. But I was really proud when we redid all the programs, because how farms feed us, that may be a grade 1, but we have it all the way through until grade 8. So each of these programs is curriculum based, structured to teach it all the way through, so that it's a different program every single year that you go through. And the reason for that is your curriculum has to build and evolve with it. So we've got 8 or 9, I'm going to get kicked or somebody's going to send me a text, but we have 8 or 9 different programs that we've got built into our education components, and they can be followed through. So if you did only how farmers feed us, then for 1 year, for grade 1 all the way through to grade 8, you'd have a different program coming here all the time. And we're evolving everything that we do as well here. So, you know, as farmers feed us, that will lead to our another discussion that you want to talk about, which is what are some of the other projects we're doing here. But that's where we can actually have all of this kind of interplay with each other. That's why I continue to stress that the vision that led to all the education programs is not just about having the access to the buildings, it's the uniqueness of what we provide to it. So it's not just the buildings itself, it's what we can do to provide a unique ability to tie in with curriculum and give it a hands-on. I mean, everybody likes the one picture on the left of the lamb and the you know, the woolly sheep, and you know, my sheep in April are all going to be sheared off and they're going to look really ugly. The chickens are going to be coming in as day olds, and you know, they look really cute until day 7, and then they're butt ugly teenagers until they grow into something else. Like, people don't understand that nature really, there's a reason why teenagers should get used to the fact that there's pimples and everything else, is because even in nature, everything's ugly when you're in the teen years. It's just no way around it. But that's what we show, is that we're all part of a bigger cycle. The stuff that interests me though is the environment and the ecosystems that we have around here. Those are where we can actually interchange some of the programs and projects that we got. Excuse me. But the one thing we can never forget about is the fact that we do have histories. So I've got, like, you know, people are interested. I've got 200 years of histories from Halton in newspapers. That was written at that time. It's not on Wikipedia or any of this internet crap where you're finding stuff. That was written on the day. So we can see, you know, talk about Spanish influenza, what it did to decimate the countryside. We can talk about all of the situations that cropped up, because when my summer students were here just this past summer, they were stunned. This is stuff that somebody like me would know, and I enjoy this, but they're like, you know what? 2020 was just the new 1920, like 1918. They had the same things going on everywhere across the board. It was identical situations, and it didn't matter to what level. If you're talking about riots, they had them back then. If you're talking about a pandemic, they had that. They had everybody fighting along the same lines, and we've only done it. All we did was repeat history. And I think that's what I like about our education, is because histories do repeat. And if we don't learn to break the cycles, we continue to do this. Why, you know, sometimes we get what we get.
Yeah, for people who have access to our event portal, I did share the history link that Jamie is referencing in his exhibit. So if you go to the Country Heritage Park exhibitor booth, the links to that historical documentation is shared in there. And it's got some pretty interesting tidbits. It's got political cartoons of the day. It's got advertisements for farming equipment and seed companies. It's a fascinating site to go through.
Yeah, that was the nice stuff that we put up. You should see the stuff that we didn't put up.
Thanks for curating it. All right, so let's talk about some of the new stuff that you've got going on. I'm just gonna unshare my screen here, since I've, here's one more screenshot of the curriculum program.
Yeah, my tiny little pond with my snapping turtles and frogs and
yeah. All right, what have I done here? I am trying to stop sharing. Well, Got some more people looking to join. All right, I guess I'll continue to share just because it's easier, but I'll go back to the presentation so that it's a picture of the park here that we can look at. And then as you tell us about different projects, maybe I can point to where you've got those
That's fine.
happening.
So, as I mentioned, we started working with an urban group, Toronto Black Farmers and Growers Collective. They use the land at the backside where we've begun developing fields. I'm a follower of new and everything old at the same time. So we rotate our crops. We only put them in for 3 or 4 years maximum anywhere that we go. And then we shift everything through. Even when I'm putting in, say, winter wheat, in this case, we've got a field of winter wheat that came after 1 year of vegetables and then 2 years of flowers. We're going to have that in there for a couple to be able to stabilize because we're trying to rejuvenate parts of the land and get back as much biomass as we can. And that we're constructed figuratively and literally on a field of clay. So it's not that easy to actually do any of this stuff. It takes a long time to be able to do it. And that's what we're doing. If you went to the top corner, I can see your arrow. So your arrow is in the right spot for the first part. If you were to drive up onto the property right now, of course, it would be illegal and you'd see a black pickup come up behind you and probably have me get out of the vehicle. But other than that, there's a container back there. Are now in the container growing business. We've made an arrangement with a company. What we're trying to do is we're going to be templating ideas for the public because it has to happen. We can't just sit here and just wait for something else to come along or somebody else to do it. So we've got a 15 chamber growing chamber at the backside that we're going to be putting in the back of the property. That'll be part of our extended food hub. We have a food hub, food distribution hub that's going to be going in beside where the food for kids are. The reason for that is you can do the value added, put it inside walkway fridges, work with other farmers, have their products distributed, work with other marketing or chaining networks to be able to do it. We've just acquired a truck that we got through the federal government's local food grant. They paid 50%, we paid 50%. It's a cooling truck. So we'll be able to develop all of these distributions and where people want to be able to go. Quite frankly, that's always been a problem. And I will be the first to tell you that distribution is the Achilles heel of anything within food. Nobody wants to believe us on that one, but it is true. If you don't get it off the fields in time, you've wasted it. So we've got a couple of units back there that's for the drying process so that we're not wasting the food. We'll be using that to make soups inside the community kitchen as well as inside the food hub. One of the bays that'll be going beside that will become an aquaponic, hydroponic growing chamber. It's not going to be huge because people fail when they make things too big. We can make it so it's scalable so that people can take it for what they need to. But this is an idea, again, where you're looking at growing plants and fish at the same time. And if it's not something that works within, say, Halton or Milton, then it's something that works in, I don't know, North Bay or something further north, where you can sell the fingerlings to the Ministry of Natural Resources and still have a continual revenue base going through. The reality is that that's where a lot of the shifts need to take place. And as we've seen, doesn't take much in Canada. A snowstorm or a blizzard means all the shelves are gone. If you had a couple of these in the small communities that were really stuck, say in St. John's, Newfoundland or something, if you had these set up right on the street fronts, you're employing 5 to 8 people and you're feeding probably 40 to 50 families out of it. And that's how I'm viewing this stuff, is how can you not only provide what's essential for people, but how can you do it in a sustainable manner at the same time? How can you do it that is an economic manner as well? So, you know, everything we do here is based around, and I have a wonderful person who's probably online hearing this, but it's all based around how we do dollars and cents on stuff. So when we do projects, we do everything based on dollars and cents. What's my return on investment? And we record all this stuff, Andrea, because at the end of the day, it's a load of crap to do an academic report. Sorry for everybody on there with PhDs and masters, but it's a load of crap to be able to do that and say it'll work, and it doesn't. This is hands-on, this has got real dollars and cents, and this is why we're looking at this. The end goal is to be able to take this operation here as a an urban eco situation with multi streams of revenue and template out ideas to the rest of the communities, not just in Halton, but everywhere, because at some point, this will be recognized. For example, the containers on wheels. Why? And if anybody's on government, they can put in a bylaw and try and beat me, but they can't. If I move it 2 feet every 42 days, it's not considered to be permanent. Therefore, I don't need a building permit. There's so many aspects to rules and regulations that stand in the way of what we do that we forget about it. So having the government say we're going to deregulate, yeah, that's fine. But when you're deregulating from 1923 standards and they should have been off the books in 1933, that's a problem for me. So I'm calling out all that because I do know for a fact that every time we used to deregulate and put a new regulation in play, it was things like Apple standards from 1921. Good for you guys. That I'm so proud of you for finding that document. You know, there are communities that still have laws against having elephants roaming their streets for when these circuses used to come in town. This is what I mean. We have to be able to evolve. It has to come to a point where we hit, 2021 rather than 1903.
Right.
And I have examples all the way through of both 1921, 1903, and 2021 here. So that's what we're doing.
Tell me about some of the greenhouse work that you're doing as well.
We did a recycled plastic water bottle greenhouse because I get frustrated. So, and it's, you know what, I've got really good people that work with me. I really do. We've got really, really solid people. This isn't a little dinky toy thing that's 1 by 1. We have an 8 foot by 6 foot greenhouse water bottle that's better and stands up better than some of the glass ones. We had a cloth glass house that we had to take down because it blew apart in the storm. My recycled water bottle ones, they don't even blink. So we have a 10 foot by 6, we have an 8 by 6. Those are examples of what you can do in high school. So you can't tell me that we don't have a problem with water bottles, because we do. We sell literally thousands and thousands of cases a week, and we're not burning them. We're not doing anything with it. So what we decided was we were going to do something funky and create this. And let me tell you, it actually does work. We grow plants in them. That's what it's supposed to be. I think the one cost us $257. The other one's about $314, and that's for the rebar. And that was partially donated. And it's just wood rebar and the water bottles. And you know what? It's something that we should be doing more of. We'll have conventional greenhouses set up here as well. That's the next phase. We're going to be putting up, well, we're going to try to put up another one so it doesn't blow down. But being in the escarpment, it tends to be windy around here some specific days. I actually broke a tractor because of the wind, if that helps anybody out there. But yes, had the hood come shearing right off on one of the storms that blew over top as I crested the hill near right where that arrow is, actually.
Oh, up there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I cannot see the chat as we are coming close to the end of our time. I want to make sure that we get to these questions that are coming in. So let me scroll back up. Do we have questions coming in here? All right. Who built the water bottle greenhouse, and do you have design plans that you can share?
We built it, and yes. And so it was my educational staff and myself. Quite frankly, we've seen one that was like 6 inches or 1 foot, and that was it, and we laughed about it. But we do have design work, and my one education person that was really handedly involved in it, Pierre, he's not here right now because we don't have it, but he loves doing that stuff, and he's a handyman, and we figured all this out just by doing what we had to do.
Amazing.
So if you want it, come and find it. We have no problems.
Yeah, you're very open with sharing your resources, which is fantastic because we don't have time and energy to recreate everything that you've done. So I love the model that you're developing, as you will test it out and then share the resources for other people that want to implement. How many people are needed to run the farm?
Are we in COVID? Or are we before COVID? Or are we after COVID?
Let's talk both.
All right. So before COVID, We had 28, mix of part-time, full-time. We have a small full-time contingent. We have mostly part-time, seasonal summer students. Last year in COVID, we were Milton's largest employer of summer students because, again, I understand how to look at regs. We had 15 summer students here. We, knock on wood, have not had any COVID at all. We hosted the farmers market here probably 6 weeks in advance of any live other markets because we knew how to go about making sure that it satisfied not just the provincial guidelines, but the regional guidelines as well. The market had to move from downtown inside Milton because it couldn't have the crowds going through on the streets, but we developed a way that demands to be here. Ideally, when I'm done with this, and by done, I mean, when I have separate divisions set up, we didn't even talk about the wellness center that we're developing with a number of groups, including the local Indigenous operations that are here. So you're familiar with it. We're creating like a wellness therapy garden circle out for there based on Indigenous patterns because people always talk, nobody does anything. So I'm calling bullshit on everything that's out there. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm calling it and just doing it now. I'm seeing so many reports on what's there. You wonder why we are going to share stuff. It's because why not? Why not do what's right for what's out there and then come back and see what the repercussions are? Normal time, I'd have 40 staff here, including summer students. When I've got my operation fully where I want it, we'll probably employ about 60 between kitchens, community kitchens, food hubs, hydroponics containers, distillery / brewery, and a wellness area. Yeah. Plus doing all the events and the weddings and everything else that we're famous for.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that brewery distillery on a separate call, but yeah, that's another exciting announcement.
It's cleaned up. We got an idea of how to do this stuff, Andrea. I always know down the road, like mine is, I'm not doing, so anybody asking me, or if they were ever to ask me, I don't do anything for today, ever. Today kind of sucks on any level that you deal with, because if you're focused only on today, you miss so many opportunities. I'm looking at how to be able to align ourselves with like-minded community organizations and partners and people and individuals, always looking with an end goal of like 3 to 5 years down the road. Because everything that's going to happen, you're going to fail on some things. And people are like, oh, you can't fail. Yeah, you can fail. You learn more from failure than you do from success.
Absolutely.
And this is all based around failure. I mean, shit, it went bankrupt 3 times before the government, like when the government closed it up. This is not based around reality some days. It's based around a not-for-profit business model that actually works and gives back to our community. Like before COVID, we gave back almost 600,000, 643,000, I think, in free space for people to do fundraisers or meetings or whatever, because that's what you have to do. You have to give back to your community if you're going to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea that you're not doing stuff for today, but you're doing it for the future, which ties very nicely into the Indigenous way of thinking of 7 generations. So I think you've got a great mindset. Are you familiar with any other properties or any other places that use this kind of model or are doing something anywhere close to what you're doing?
No, but, and this is why we're kind of unique property. So there's lots of similar, something could be done along the way properties, but they're usually smaller. We are beside 7 million people in Toronto, 13 if you go extended. But the reality is that this was developed as a way of looking at the crossroads. We're not a pioneer village. Pioneer villages are only 7 years. So you think of Black Creek, it's formulated between 1835 and 1841, that kind of era. It's very specific. We're not. I mean, I can't stress this enough. I have 1830 homesteads and I drive a 2020 case tractor. And let me tell you, really like it. Like the computers and like the, I like the fact that it's a CO2 emission, zero emission burner that we've got in there because it converts it. Like that's what people are unaware of, is that everything that we try and do links back to something that is favorable to what we're trying to do with the environment. Can it be done anywhere else? I'm sure that if people want to try and do the model, they're more than welcome to. I've had lots of people question me on how to do it. Some think that we take too many chunks, too many big chunks. They think that I'm way out there, and that's fine. Others will say that I haven't gone far enough, and one of them is coming to see me tomorrow. So, we talk about how we're broken up on stuff. My board is mostly female. My staffing is mostly female. I do have diversity on the board coming in April of color, but I mean, when I first started, there were 18 men running this place with one woman. So that's my board. And quite frankly, I can honestly say I'm quite happy with being able to work this around to what's needed. We got to be reflective, and I know how I videotape. I know how I look on it. I'm a gray-haired old white guy, and I can't really be saying this, but at the end of the day, I don't do a single thing that I do for myself. This is for my children and my grandchildren, because they have to have the same abilities as I've had. Not to say that I've had a hard life. It's been whatever it is, but I want them just to have the same chances. Nothing more, nothing less. They can build their world for themselves. I think my generation has kind of screwed the world in many ways because of the way that it was done. So whether or not I want to be, viewed as irrelevant or however, I don't care. I know that what we're doing here will actually catch on. We'll have a few containers. We'll be able to teach people down in Toronto some of the standards for it. We're talking about doing a mentoring and learning program for farm help, because COVID showed us that we don't have that. But I think there's a real taste for people wanting to learn how to do stuff, and we offer different scenarios coming forward. So once we can break out of that, we'll begin that education side as well and have people come out here. And 16 acres don't seem like a lot until you do an acre of land and you're pulling weeds, and then you can come back and tell me at the end of the week how you feel.
I have read statistics about the average age of current farmers, and that there is a succession problem, and that the kids don't want to take over the family business. But there's a whole surge of people who want to know how to farm, want to get into it, and can't access land.
See, you want to bring that up? Let's talk.
I thought let's go out with a bang here in our conversation.
Yeah. So here's the realities of what I deal with. And so my average age of farming is approximately 61 to 63 in Ontario. 63, by the way, is the heavy end. That's the ones doing your fruit and vegetable production. There's not a lot of people coming back from that. The ones that are taking it, I know a lot of really good young people, but they have to work with their parents on that, and that takes a long time. Capital projects are always there. Succession is always about how much money the government can claim on what's there and not look at what the realities are. That's one. Two, you're right. But my fight has been and shall always be that we have probably the stupidest set of rules and government people in place when it comes to planning. If you're going to look at how to plan in a province that has the greatest amount of class 1, 2, and 3 lands in our country, and by country I mean Canada, then we need to look at how we be able to work with those lands. Every time we pave it over, it's not coming back. And land acquisition has only become problematic, simply put, because the amount of people are spreading themselves up. Back in 2003, I almost agreed with them, and that's a far cry for me to say, but John Gerritsen and Dalton McGuinty talked about building up, not out. And I could almost agreed with them at that point, because as you consolidate and as you bring in, that makes it easier to look at land in a different way. So is it difficult? Yeah, you're damn right. Is it impossible? No. But there's going to have to be give and takes with community people like myself. And community people like myself that are able to give up a plot or do something to be able to help out. That's what we're here for. And at the end of the day, that's what it's always going to be about, is how do we contribute to where it needs to be. I don't think that there's going to be 10 or 15 spare acres coming up somewhere in Halton. It's a tough gig inside Halton. And again, that same premier that I really had to deal with, he once told me that there was no farms south of 401. Well, I'm south of the 401 and I'm a farmland here. And there's a lot of us farmers in and south of the 401. And that was his way of saying that all it's going to be is spread out. That's the wrong way. So if you want a real quick history, when I look at the Burlington Skyway Bridge and the one that crosses over, all I see is the fact that they industrialized and commercialized the best orchards in all of Ontario at that point. Fields of vegetables spread all the way through on the backside. When I look down at Hogtown, the reason why they call it Hogtown is because there was more pigs than there were people in Toronto. That meant that all the streets were running with pigs. That's why they had areas filled with slaughterhouses and abattoirs, so that they could access it going out onto the St. Lawrence and have that market going forward. That's where the name Hogtown came from, not from the Argonauts. It came from the amount of pigs that lived inside Toronto. But see, we forget our histories and we forget our own basic histories of what's there. So in my case, when I worked at the Marsh, it was about that. How do we make improvements? Are bulrushes just as important as food? Well, guess what? When you ain't got food, bulrushes taste like shit. And so we had to figure that one out along the way too. These are the simple realities. And so you want to go out with a bang? I would be the first to tell you, I'd love to be able to have something that says somewhere along the way, instead of having 10% green space left in the subdivision, take the backside of it and make it a community garden for that community that's being constructed, and have a learning functional tool that goes with it. We're going to lose the land. We might as well at least have 10 or 12 acres that we can play with, and where they're going to go out and they're going to learn how hard it is to make food, so that there's going to be an appreciation, not by my generation, not by the generation that was before me, but by the generation that will come 2 generations after me, that there'll be an appreciation on how difficult it is. Because until we can actually a replicator like they have on Star Trek, we ain't going to have our food handed to us.
It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Jamie. Thank you so much. Well, you've done all the talking. I've done a lot of listening and learning. I don't see any questions in the chat box, but I will give people 1 more minute to start putting in questions if you have any. Otherwise, Jamie has lots of resources, lots of knowledge to share. We will make sure that as soon as people are able to come and visit you, that we will start to direct them back up to you. Thank you for your comments. Amazing conversation. Can't wait to visit. I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. And thank you so much for being our guest speaker today. And I think you've ended us on a fantastic note that we do need to remember where our food comes from. We need to appreciate what it takes to grow that food, and remember that land, while it's not always needed, because we can grow in alternative ways, if we don't protect the land, what have we got left? So,
no, like I said, come on up and see how we're doing it with different ways, because it's inside, outside, and in a container.
Inside, outside, just not upside down yet. So
not yet.
We'll figure that one out next. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. If you have questions for Jamie later, please send them to us and we will forward them on and get you some answers. Have a wonderful afternoon, and remember to join us this evening for How Not to Suck at Growing Succulents at 7 p.m. Thanks, Jamie. Have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.